It's cold. Too cold for Blackfoot this winter. Or maybe it isn't the weather at all. Maybe it's me. The years have slowed my blood, thinned my skin, and stolen the heat from my bones. I feel it most when I sit still, wrapped in my comforter, rocking in the old chair I built with my own 2 hands 32 years ago. Edith had been pregnant with G back then, and every evening after long shifts on the lines, I worked on that chair. My fingers were younger, my back straighter, my body strong enough to carve and hammer for hours after climbing poles all day. Now the chair creaks when I move, and my knees answer it with their own creaks, louder still. I stare out the window at the yard. The sky is the color of ash, the trees bare. That maple, my maple, I planted the day Edith and I bought this lot, when the house was just studs and dreams. Now the branches claw at the gray sky like bones, empty and cold. My name is Merle Ferris. I'm 67. Everyone in Blackfoot knows me, or at least thinks they do. For nearly 4 decades, I climbed poles and strung wires, fought storms so people could keep their lights burning and furnaces humming. 39 years of bitter wind and blazing sun, 39 years of frostbite, burns, bruises, and falls. I gave this town power, and in return, I got a body that stiffens like wood and fingers that won't bend straight anymore. Still, the house I built myself has stood solid, even after Edith left it. Blackfoot isn't the kind of place you leave. Most people are born here, go to school here, find work here, and rest in the cemetery by the church when their time comes. Sure, some wander away for college or big dreams, but sooner or later most come back. My son G did. Left with ideas, came home with a wife, Vera, and talk about how there was no future in this town. Yet here they are, still here. Maybe it was easier to stay, easier than facing the grind of the city. My boy never liked hard work. Time was endless when I was young. A day felt like a long stretch of road. Now it snaps past like a whip. 5 years already since Edith died. 5 years since this house went quiet. Since I've sat here in the evenings with only the wind howling. Down the chimney and a photograph on the mantel for company. I still hear her sometimes. Her nagging about the drafts, the warped cellar door, the crack under the window. Edith always found something to point out. These days, I sometimes leave the window cracked open on purpose. Let the draft come. When the curtains flutter, I pretend for a second it's her passing through the room. After she passed, G and Vera visited less and less. At first every week, then every month, and now only when duty forces them. Christmas, maybe. Thanksgiving, if it's convenient. My birthday, if they remember. Unless, of course, they need something. Then they find their way up my icy driveway without trouble. Today is one of those days. I hear their car before I see it. That brand new Ford they bought last year purrs into my yard. A vehicle I can't figure out how they afford, not on G's job in supply at the construction company, and Vera's receptionist wages at the River Lodge. The house they bought is too big, too. Mortgaged to the roof beams, no doubt. They live shiny lives on credit and pride. The door swings open without a knock. G never knocks. Tall like I once was, but soft. His hands are pale, smooth, never blistered by work. "Hello, Dad," he says, trying to sound cheerful. "I'm breathing," I answer, eyes still on the maple tree. "Dad, why are you always like this?" "We came here in good faith," he mutters, the old irritation slipping through. Vera follows him in, taking off her leather gloves. Fine gloves, too fine for this town. On her finger, a stone glitters, a ring worth more than G's paycheck. Where do they get the money? She smiles, a smile I've never trusted. It stops at her lips and never reaches her eyes. "How's your heart, Merle?" she asks in that sweet, careful tone. There it is. Always the same question. Always the same path the conversation takes. My health, my heart, my future. And then, inevitably, my money Heart's like a heart, I mutter. Still beating. She perches primly on the couch beside G, crossing her legs in tight jeans, looking like she belongs in a city cafe rather than this old living room. Dr. Brady said you need to go back to the clinic, G says, sitting stiff on the edge of the couch. I talked to him last week, I reply sharply. Why would you talk to him about me? Did I sign something saying you could meddle in my affairs? Dad, don't start. He rubs his nose, just like Edith used to when she was tired. We're worried. You need surgery. The valve's failing. You know it. I know. I've known for months. But hospitals stole Edith from me. She went in smiling, saying it was only routine. She came out in a zipped bag. Since then, the thought of white walls and beeping machines makes me sweat cold. Medicine works wonders now, Merle, Vera says. You're still young, only 67. Her voice is honey, but her eyes weigh me like a ledger. Young, I snort. Edith said the same when she passed, told me I could still find someone, that I wasn't old. But behind my back, she called me a stubborn old mule who refused good advice. The surgery will cost money, I say finally, watching them closely. We'll help, G says quickly. Too quickly. I got a promotion. We've been saving a little. For 5 years, they've never once offered to help. Not when I struggled to fix the roof. Not when I scraped by on my pension. Now suddenly they're generous. I don't buy it. Why so eager, son? I ask quietly. Because you're my dad, he says, offended. Of course we want to help. We're family. Family. I worked 60 hours a week to keep this family alive. Climbed poles in freezing. Rain came home with frozen hands and still found time to play ball with him, help with school, teach him to use tools. Now he comes once a month, sits 15 minutes, and calls it family. When? I ask, my voice tired. Next Monday, G says. His face softens, relief spilling across it. I'll drive you. Surgery Tuesday morning. You'll stay a couple weeks for recovery. And the house? I ask. My house is more than wood and nails. It holds Edith and it holds me. I'll check on it every day, G promises. Pick up the mail, keep the heat on. I nod, but a worm of doubt burrows in me. They look too eager, sit too straight, glance too often at each other. Concern doesn't usually look rehearsed. Vera gets up. I'll make some tea. She slips into the kitchen, and while the kettle clatters, G leans in close. Dad, he says, lowering his voice, you should let me have power of attorney. Just in case, if something happens while you're under anesthesia. I already have one, I cut him off. Signed it 3 years ago after that fall. Remember? He falters. Oh, right. Forgot. Does it still? It's valid for 5 years, I say firmly. He leans back, lips tight. Vera returns with the tea, smiling that empty smile. And the talk drifts to the weather, the mayor, little things. But my mind isn't on small talk. It's on the way they keep glancing toward my safe wall. The way. Their new car gleams while their jobs can't possibly cover it. The way their concern for me comes wrapped in the smell of money. Half an hour later, they leave, promising to be back Monday. I watch their Ford slide down the icy drive. G didn't sand it, though I told him last week it's dangerous. If I fall with this heart, that's the end of me. That evening, I pack. My bag, some clothes, a razor, a book about an old detective solving crimes after retirement. Edith would have laughed at it, called it nonsense. She always said the world belongs to the young. Maybe she was right. Sunday, I put my bills and papers in order, locked the important ones in the safe behind the bedroom painting. Old photos, too, of Edith, of little G, of my parents. Not that I don't trust my son. It's just better to be careful. That night, the phone rings. It's G. Dad, listen. I can't drive you tomorrow. Work emergency, but I talked to Mrs. Pringle. She'll take you. Mrs. Pringle is 75 and half blind, but I don't argue. What's the use? All right, I say. She'll pick you up at 9. And Dad, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Okay, I answer, though I don't believe it. That night, I dream of Edith, young again, standing under the maple tree, waving at me. Merle, she says softly, you've always been too trusting. And I wake in the dark, heart pounding, cold sweat on my skin. In the morning, Mrs. Pringle arrives in her ancient Chevy. We barely make it to the clinic. She nearly crashes into other cars twice and runs a red light once, but eventually I end up in the emergency room of St. Luke's Hospital, Blackfoot's only hospital. A nurse helps me fill out paperwork. Dr. Brady, a full man with aired face, claps me on the shoulder and tells me everything will be fine. Routine surgery, Mr. Ferris. We do one of these every month. You'll be good as new in a couple weeks. I nod and smile, but inside I'm clenching with fear. What if I don't wake up from the anesthesia? What if I never see my house again? My maple tree in the yard? Edith's picture on the mantel? In the evening, before I go to bed, I try to call G, but he doesn't pick up. He's probably really busy at work. Or he just doesn't want to talk to me. I lie in my hospital bed listening to the instruments beeping in the hallway, to the snoring of my roommate, Mr. Jenkins, who had his gallbladder removed yesterday. And I think about my home, how Edith and Icos the lot, how I dug the foundation pit myself, how I raised the walls, laid, the roof, the house I built with my own hands, the house I lived in for almost 40 years, the house where G was born, where Edith died. Before the operation, I take one last look at the surgeon, a young woman with intelligent eyes, Dr. Chen, and say, "Take care of my heart." She smiles and replies, "I will, Mr. Ferris. And you take care of waking up. Deal." The mask descends over my face, and I inhale the sweet smell of anesthesia. One last thought before falling into darkness. Edith, I'll be with you soon. If not in this world, then in the next. I wake up to the beeping of instruments and the smell of antiseptic. For the first moment, I can't realize where I am. Then realization slowly returns. Hospital surgery. Heart valve. So, I survived. I don't know whether to be happy about that or not. My chest hurts like a truck ran over it. My throat is sore from the tube they pulled out while I was unconscious. My mouth is as dry as the desert. "Welcome back, Mr. Ferris," the nurse says, noticing I've opened my eyes, young with freckles on her nose. Reminds me of Edith in her youth. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been run over." I will off a hearty laugh. "That's normal. The surgery was a success, doctor." Chen replaced the valve. "Now it's all about recovery. Would you like some water?" I nod. She brings a glass with a tube to my lips. Water sounds like the most delicious drink in the world. "Your son called," she says, putting the glass away. "He asked about your condition. Said he'd come to visit as soon as he could." "Thank you," I said, though I didn't think Gar would. "Be here anytime soon. He's always had better things to do than visit his father." The first few days after the surgery are spent half asleep. Pain, medication, sleep, nurses changing bandages, doctors checking vitals. I moved out of intensive care and into a regular room, with a neighbor, Ray Hammond, a man my age who recently had a hip replacement. "This is my third one," he says as we get acquainted. "The first two were worn out. It's all because of work. 30 years in construction. All my joints are busted to hell." Ray and I quickly hit it off. Both working men, both widowers, both with complicated relationships with their kids. His daughter lives in Seattle, visits once a year, calls on holidays, just like her mother, Rai says bitterly. Karen was always cold, too. 25 years, and it's like living with a stranger. "I was lucky with Edith," I said, "but with my son, I don't know where I went. Wrong. I think I did everything right and he's grown up. Not the way I'd hoped." Rai nods, understanding without further ado. "That's the good thing about dealing with people of our generation. You don't have to explain the obvious. On the 5th day after surgery, I am lifted out of bed for the first time. Dr. Chen helps me take a few steps around the room. "Well done, Mr. Ferris," she says, propping me up on my elbow. "For someone your age, you're recovering remarkably fast." "I've been physically active all my life," I reply, trying not to show how dizzy I feel. "I haven't been sitting behind a computer," she laughs. "I can tell. You have great muscle tone. If this keeps up, we should be able to discharge you in a week or two." That evening, just as I'm about to go to bed, G walks in. He looks tired, circles under his eyes. Either he's been working really hard or it's the result of sleepless nights for other reasons. "Hey, Dad," he says, sitting down in the chair next to my bed. "How are you?" "Alive, as you can see," I reply, trying to sit up higher. "The doctor says I'm on the mend." "That's good." He nods, but he's not looking at me. He's looking at the wall. "Yeah, sorry I didn't get here sooner. Work got in the way." "It's okay," I say, though something inside me is clenching. I know. Work's more important. He wrinkles his nose. "Dad, don't start. I really wanted to come early, but we have a new project and if I fail, I'll be fired." I said, "I understand," I say again. And it's true. I understand that for G, work, money, status have always been more important than family. I'm the one who doesn't understand why. "How's the house?" I ask, changing the subject. "Are you checking the heat?" "Yeah, it's fine." He nods, still not looking me in the eye. "I come by every other day. The boiler's working fine." We talk for another 15 minutes about the weather, about his work, about my treatment. The conversation doesn't go well. There's too much unspoken between us, too many old resentments and disappointments. "Well, I have to go," he finally says, getting up. "Feel better, Dad. I'll stop by again one of these days." He doesn't. Not the next day, not the day after, not the week after. Calls a couple times, says he's busy, that the project takes up all his time, that Vera says hi. Time drags slowly in. The hospital. The days are like one another. Shots, pills, doctor rounds, conversations with Ray, occasional walks down the hall. The TV in the common room shows news that no one is interested in, and old shows that everyone has already seen, on one. Of these walks, I meet Eugene Coleman, an elderly African-American man from the 4th floor. He has lung cancer stage 4. 2 months to go, maybe 3, he says with surprising calm as we sit in the hospital courtyard, wrapped in blankets. It's been a cold December this year, but I'm not complaining. I've lived a good life. 4 kids, 9 grandkids, built my business from the ground up, a machine shop, on Maple Street. I nod. Coleman's is the best shop in Blackfoot. I used to take my car there myself until I stopped driving a couple years ago. My eyesight ain't what it used to be. "What have you been doing, Merle?" Eugene asks, lighting a cigarette. He can do it. It can't get any worse. I was a rigger on power lines. "Oh, a high-rise guy." He nods respectfully. "Dangerous work. My cousin used to do it. Fell off a pole once, broke his back. Never worked again." "It happened to me, too," I say, remembering my fall 3 years ago. But I was lucky to get away with a cracked spine. 6 months later, I went back to work. We are silent, looking at the bare trees in the hospital garden. The snow hasn't fallen yet, but we can already feel its approach in the air. "Are the children visiting?" Eugene asks after a pause. "My son has been once," I answer. "Busy at work." Eugene hums. "It's always the same, isn't it? Mine come every day. They take turns. We made a schedule." He laughs, but there's no bitterness in his laugh. Sometimes I even tell them to let the old man rest, but they still come. I don't know what to say. Envy. Yeah, I guess so. I envy Eugene and his kids for scheduling visits. "You know what I realized lying here?" Eugene says, putting out his cigarette on the armrest of the bench. "All that matters at the end is the people who love you. Not money, not houses, not cars, people. I nod. But something inside resists. What if there are no people who love you? What does it matter then? Rai is discharged the next day. He is replaced by a young guy after appendicitis who sits on his phone all the time and won't talk. I miss talking to Ray, his grunts and jokes. And then Dr. Chen brings good news. My vitals are normal. My recovery is going better than expected. If this continues, I may be discharged in the next few days before me scheduled discharge date. Just promise me you'll follow all the instructions, she says, looking at Masterly over her glasses. No physical activity for the first time, no alcohol, pills on a schedule. I promise, Doc, I say. And it's not a lie. I value my life no matter how lonely it is. I call G to tell him I'll be discharged soon. He doesn't pick up. I leave a message, but he doesn't call back. I call again tonight. Same thing. Finally, I have toast Mrs. Pringle for help. She agrees to drive me home, even though I'm afraid to get in her car after our trip to the hospital. On the morning of December 20th, I am officially discharged. Dr. Chen gives final instructions. The freckle-faced nurse helps me pack my things. I say goodbye to Eugene, promising to check in on him while he's here. We both know I'll keep my promise, and he probably won't leave this hospital alive. Mrs. Pringle arrives on time. Her driving is still just as horrendous, but by some miracle we make it to my house without incident. Thank you, Alice, I say as I climb out of the car. You really helped me out. Come on, Merle. She waves me off. Neighbors are supposed to help each other. Your Edith helped me so many times with the kids when they were little. I don't forget that. She leaves, and I stand in front of my house and feel strangely uneasy. Something is wrong, but I can't figure out what it is. Maybe it's just weird coming back after being away for 3 weeks. I walk slowly down the path to the porch. G hasn't even bothered to shovel the snow that fell last week. It's slippery. I have to hold on to the railing. Before I go inside, I check the mailbox. It's full of bills, ads, catalogs. Gar didn't check the mail, even though he said he would. I rake it all, up and go inside. It's cold inside, much colder than it should be if the heat was working properly. So G lied about that too. I drop the mail on Thedable in the hallway and go to the thermostat. It's set at 15 degrees, the minimum, to keep the pipes from freezing. I turn it up to 20, listening to the boiler start up with a creak. The house looks untouched. All the things are in their places. Gar really hasn't come in here, or he has, but he hasn't touched anything. Even the cup I drank coffee out of that morning before I left for the hospital is still on the kitchen table. I feel tired and frustrated. Not only did my son not visit me in the hospital, but he didn't take care of the house like he promised, and he didn't even meet me after I was discharged. I sit down in the rocking chair, closing my eyes. My chest still hurts, but it's tolerable. The pills are helping. It should go through the mail, but I don't have the energy. I fall asleep, lulled by the creaking of the chair and the hum of the heating. I wake up from the cold. It's already dark outside the window. The clock reads 6 p.m. I've been asleep for hours. I get up writhing with pain in my chest and go to the kitchen to put the kettle on. Then I go back into the hallway to get the mail. I sort it at the kitchen. Table, sipping tea, electricity bills, water bills, phone bills, advertisements for Christmas sales, a greeting card from the insurance company, and an envelope from the law firm of Baker Stone and Associates. I open it first. Inside is an official notice of retitling my house. My house, according to the deed, it now belongs to G and Vera Ferris. The deed was made on December 15th while I was in the hospital. At first, I can't believe my eyes. I read the document over and over again, but it says in black and white, the house is sold. My house, which I built with my own hands, in which I live for almost 40 years, in which G was born and Edith died, has been sold without my knowledge or consent. My hands begin to tremble, but not from fear or despair, from rage. God used the power of attorney I'd executed 3 years ago when I was laid up with a broken back. a power of attorney that gave him the right to make decisions about my care if I became incapacitated, not to sell my house. Grabbing my phone, dialing GAR's number, beeps, beeps, voicemail, dial again. Same result. I call Vera's cell phone. No answer. I dial their home phone and the answering machine says they're temporarily unavailable. I throw the phone on Thedible and try to breathe deeply like Dr. Chen taught me. Anger is a strain on the heart. I'm not supposed to worry, but how can you? Not worry when your own son sold the house out from under your ass while you were in the hospital? An hour later, having calmed down a bit, I try calling G again. It's no use. I call G's neighbors, the Johnsons. Mrs. Johnson says she hasn't seen Gar and Vera in days. Their car is not in the driveway. Maybe they're away for the holidays. She suggests they said something about going away for Christmas. I thank her and hang up. Christmas trip. That's where the money from the sale of my house went to travel for Gar and Vera, while I lay in a hospital bed thinking I still had a roof over my head. The next few days passed like a blur. I try to call G every way I can. I call his job and they say he's on vacation until New Year's Eve. I call Verna's parents and they say they don't know where their daughter and son-in-law are. I even drive to their house overcome with pain and weakness. But the house is empty. Neighbors confirm that G and Vera left a few days ago with their suitcases. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, I sit in my rocking chair, looking at the decorated Christmas tree in the corner of the living room. I've been decorating it since before the hospital, out of habit. Edith always loved Christmas, and I continue to honor the tradition even after her death. My phone beeps. A message from G. Just a few words. Your house is sold. I left with my wife. Bye. I stare at the screen and feel something die inside me. My last hope that this is some kind of mistake, a misunderstanding. No, my son really did sell my house, take the money, and leave with his wife, leaving me a mocking message on Christmas Day. I thought I would be crushed when the final confirmation of betrayal came. I thought I would sob, curse fate, fall into despair. But instead, all I feel is cold, crystalline rage, a fury that gives me strength, clears my thoughts, makes my blood run faster through my veins. Okay, I think, looking at the Christmas tree, flashing multicolored lights. So, it's war. You betrayed me, son. Sold the house I built for you and your mother, the house you grew up in. Well, we'll see who has the last laugh. I slowly rise from the chair, walk to the cabinet, and pull out the bottle of whiskey I've been saving for a special occasion. I pour some into a glass and bring it to my lips. Then I remember Dr. Chen's warning, no alcohol, and set the glass aside with a sigh. I need a clear head. I need a plan. Does Gar think he can just take me out of my life? That I'm a helpless old man who will accept betrayal? He doesn't know me well. He doesn't know me very well. I sit down at my desk, grab a notebook and a pen. I start writing. Who can help? What needs to be done? How to get my house back and punish G and Vera for what they did. The rage inside me turns to determination. Cold, hard as ice, they'll regret betraying me. They'll realize that old Merle Ferris is not so easily broken. The morning after Christmas was clear and frosty. Sitting at the kitchen table, I reread the message from G. Your house is sold. I left with my wife. Bye. It's short, merciless, like the stab of a knife. My fingers clench around the cup of cold coffee. Yesterday I was shocked, then furious. Today, there's antsy resolve inside me. I know what needs to be done. The first thing is to figure out exactly how G sold the house and where the money went. I need information and I know who can provide it. Quentin Weed. We've known each other since we were kids. We went to the same high school, then we went our separate ways. I went to work as a handyman. He went to law school. 35 years he practiced in Blackfoot. Knew all the legal loopholes, all the gossip, all the influential people. He retired 5 years ago, but he kept his connections. I dial his number. The dial tone is long, and I'm about to hang up when I hear his voice hoarse from sleep. Weed here. Quint, this is Merle Ferris. I'm sorry to call you so early. Merle? There's surprise in his voice. Haven't heard from you in ages. What's wrong? I need help, Quintus. Legal and maybe not so much legal. A pause, then. Come to my place in an hour. Do you remember the address? I do. Thank you. Quinton's house was an old Victorian mansion on Oak Street, one of the prettiest in Blackfoot. The practice of law was lucrative. I park my old pickup truck next to his Lexus and feel the contrast. My whole life is a contrast to the lives of people like Quinton, or what G and Vera want to be. Quinton meets me at the door, tall, gaunt, with a neatly trimmed gray beard. His eyes are intelligent, wary. Come on in, he says, letting me in. Coffee? I wouldn't say no. We go into his office, a large room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. He pours coffee from a silver coffee pot and hands me a cup. Tell me. I tell everything about the illness, about the clinic, about the power of attorney, about Gar's betrayal, about the Christmas message. Quinton listens without interrupting, only occasionally frowning or nodding. Show me the paperwork, he says. When I finish, I hand him a copy of the power of attorney and the notice of sale of the house. He studies them carefully, occasionally muttering something under his breath. So, he says finally, setting the papers aside, I see two problems. First, this power of attorney doesn't authorize the sale of real estate. It's limited to medical matters and related financial decisions. Second, it expired a year ago. I can feel the warmth of hope welling up inside of me. So, the sale is illegal. Looks like it. Quinton nods. But we still need to verify exactly how the transaction went down. Who's the buyer? Which notary certified? The deed? Which realtor handled the deed? I don't know. I admit the notice only says that the house was sold on December 15th by G. Ferris, acting on my behalf under a power of attorney. H. Quinton drummed his fingers on the table. Give me a day or two. I'll make inquiries. I know someone at the registry office. They can provide a copy of the sales contract. Thank you, Quintus. I won't be in debt. He's waving me off. Don't be silly. We've known each other for 40 years. Besides, his eyes sparkle. I love uncovering shenanigans, especially when it involves family betrayal. I'm about to leave when he stops me. One more question, Merle. What do you know about G and Vera's financial situation? I hesitate. As far as I know, they have a mortgage, big house, obviously unaffordable, and a new car, and Vera wears expensive clothes all the time, so they could be struggling financially. Quinton nods. That explains why they needed the money from the sale of your house. But it doesn't explain why they decided to act so drastic. What do you mean? They could have just asked you for help or offered to sell the house legally with your consent. Instead, they went on a crime spree. Why? I don't know the answer. Or I do, but I don't want to admit it. Because Gar and Vera are the kind of people who can't get enough, who want more than they deserve, who think the world owes them. I'll find out, Quinton says, seeing my confusion. In the meantime, you hang in there and don't tell anyone about our plans. I spend the next 2 days anxiously waiting. I call the hospital, find out that my friend Eugene Coleman is feeling worse. I visit him. We sit in the hospital garden smoking secretly from the nurses. He talks about his children, his grandchildren, how they are taking care of him. I nod and smile. But inside, pain gnaws at me. My only son sold my house and left with his wife, leaving me a taunting message. The third day after Christmas, Quinton calls. Come over, he says briefly. There's news. It's not just him in his office now, but a short, sharp-eyed woman, Brenda Martinez, a civil litigation lawyer, Quinton introduces. Her. So, Quinton says as we all sit down, here's what we found out. Your house did sell on December 15th. The buyers are G and Verna Ferris. What? I can't believe my ears. They bought my house from themselves. Well, G, acting under your supposed power of attorney, sold the house to himself in Verna for well below market value, 120,000 instead of about 200. But why? Here's why. Quentin holds out a print out of a bank statement to me. The day after the sale, they took out a loan against the house, $100,000, and they immediately wired the money to the Bermuda Dreams Travel Company. 50,000 into the mortgage account. 50,000. I look at the numbers and I feel nauseous. My house that I built with my own hands that I've lived in for 40 years sold for nothing so that my son and his wife could go to a luxury resort and pay off part of their mortgage. That's a crime, I say, barely containing the tremor in my voice. Exactly. Brenda Martinez nods. Fraud. Forgery. Maybe even grand larceny, and most importantly, using an invalid power of attorney. What am I supposed to do? I ask, looking at them both. We have a plan, Quentin says. First, we file a civil suit to invalidate the transaction. At the same time, we file a police report for fraud. I know a cop who can help, I say, remembering Ezra Singh. I once gave him a roof over his head when he was going through a bad divorce. Great, Quentin nods. Police connections never hurt, but the important thing is timing. When do G and Vera get back from vacation, I wonder? Alice Pringle said Vera had a manicure appointment for December 28th. So, December 27th. Tomorrow. Perfect. Quentin smiles and there's something predatory in his smile. We'll get all the paperwork ready today. Tomorrow morning, we'll file the lawsuit and the police report. And tonight, when they get back, they'll be in for a surprise. Brenda Martinez is explaining the legalities to me. Power of attorney fraud is a serious offense. G and Verna face not only civil liability but criminal charges. Even prison time is a possibility. Do you want your son to go to jail? She asked me bluntly. I remain silent, not knowing what to say. Do we want that? Part of me, the part of me that raised little G, taught him to ride his bike, helped him with his homework, screams no. But the other part, the part that got the "your house is sold" I left with my wife by text at Christmas whispers. Yes, let him. Get what he deserves. I want justice, I finally say. And I want my house back. We'll do our best, Brenda nods. But be prepared for the process to take a while. How long? Months? Maybe a year. A year. A year of living in limbo. A year of court hearings, depositions, nervousness. At my age after heart surgery, that's a serious challenge. There is another option, Quentin says as if reading my mind. An out-OFC court settlement. If Garand Vera admit their guilt, return the house, and compensate for the damage, we can avoid going to trial. Would they do that? I asked skeptically. When they realize they're facing jail time, it's possible. We discuss the details, and gradually the plan takes shape. Tomorrow morning, we file the suit and the police report. Ezra Singh, if he agrees to help, will accompany me to Ganvera's house tonight when they return from vacation. We'll present them with evidence of their crime and offer them a choice. Cooperate and avoid jail, or resist and get the maximum penalty. Just don't do anything amateur-ish. Merle Quentin warns. No threats, no violence, just the law. I understand. I nod, though I'm seething, inside wanting to see Gar's face when he realizes his plan has failed. After the meeting, I drive to the police station. Ezra Singh is on duty, and I ask for a face-to-face meeting. He looks older than I remember. Wrinkles deeper, hair grayer, but his eyes are still the same. Intelligent, attentive. Minus Mr. Ferris, he says as we sit down in his office. What can I do for you? I tell him the whole story. The illness, Gar's betrayal, the power of attorney fraud. I show him the documents Quentin and Brenda prepared. I explain our plan. You want me to be officially present when you meet your son? Ezra asks. Yes, I want it to be legal, and so I don't do anything stupid. Ezra stares at me for a long moment, studying me. Then he nods. I remember how you helped me when I had nowhere to go. I was on the edge. No house, no wife, alimony around my neck. You gave me a roof over my head and didn't charge a dime. I haven't forgotten that. Thank you, Ezra. You're welcome, Mr. Ferris. Fraud is a serious offense, and kinship fraud is doubly so. We're working out the details. Ezra will take a statement tomorrow morning and begin a formal investigation. In the evening, he'll accompany me to Gar and Vera's house when they return from vacation. Just one request, Ezra says. Have another officer with us, a young fellow, Brett Hines. He's learning from, and he could use the experience. Sure, I agree. The more witnesses, the better. Back at home, I feel strangely calm. For the first time. In days, I don't feel like a victim. I have a plan, I have support, I have proof. Tomorrow, G and Vera will realize that you can't betray your own father with impunity. I sit down at my desk, pull out my notebook, and start writing. Everything I want to say to G. All the accusations, all the questions, all the angry words building up inside. Then I reread what I've written and tear it up into little pieces. No, I won't yell and accuse. I will be calm and cold as ice. Let the law speak for me. In the evening, I check Vera's Facebook page. New photos from Bermuda. White sand, turquoise sea, cocktails with umbrellas, G and Vera at a restaurant, smiling, tanned. In the comments, Vera's friend asks, "When are you coming back?" Vera replies, "Tomorrow night." Flight is at 19:30. I take a screenshot and send it to Ezra and Quentin. The plan enters its final stage. G and Vera will receive their Christmas present tomorrow night. Before I go to bed, I take a long look at Edith's picture on my bedside table. "What would you say if you knew what Orson had done?" I asked quietly. "Would you forgive him?" The picture is silent, but I know the answer. Edith has always been kinder than me, gentler. She would have found an excuse, given me a second chance. But even she couldn't forgive such a betrayal. "Tomorrow, Edith," I whisper, turning off the light. "Tomorrow, justice will be done." The evening of December 27th was cold and clear. The stars hung over Blackfoot like tiny ice flakes, and the air was so frosty, it burned my lungs with every breath. I sat in Ezra Singh's patrol car at the corner of Linen Avenue and Maple Street, where I had a good view of Gar and Verna's house. Next to me was Assalant Ezra, and in the back seat was a young policeman named Brett Hines, tapping his fingers nervously on his knee. "Are you sure you want to wait here, Mr. Ferris?" Ezra asked, glancing at his watch. "Their flight isn't until 19:30. Even if it's not delayed, they won't be here until 2100 hours. I'll wait," I answered firmly. "I want to see their faces." Ezra nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He understood. Young Hines probably didn't, but it didn't matter. Time stretched slowly. We hardly spoke at all. Ezra would occasionally answer the radio, and I would look out the window at my son's house, a big, beautiful house with 2 columns at the entrance and a manicured, albeit now covered lawn. The house that Gar and Verna had spent too much money on, which had led them to take the desperate step of selling my house while I was in the hospital. "Have you and your son always had you in a complicated relationship?" Ezra asked suddenly, breaking the silence. I wondered, had our relationship always been complicated? No, not always. When Gar was little, it was simple. He loved me. I loved him. I taught him to ride his bike, play baseball, fix broken toys. He looked at me with admiration, proud that his father could climb tall poles and fix things that others didn't even understand how to fix. "No," I finally answered. "We'd been close once. Then he grew up, went away to school, married Vera, and he became different." "People change," Ezra said philosophically, especially under the influence of other people. I nodded, thinking about Vera. She'd Always seemed too cold, too calculating for my son. Always wanted more money, more status, more things. Maybe she was the one who drove to betray himself. Or was it always in him, just waiting to happen? Car, Brett said suddenly from the back seat. A cab. I tensed, staring at the yellow car slowly approaching down the snow-covered street. It stopped in front of Gar and Verna's house. They got out of the car, tanned, wearing light jackets, clearly not designed for the Blackfoot cold. Gar paid the driver. Vera took the suitcase out of the trunk. They didn't notice our car parked in the shade of the trees. "Is it time?" I asked, looking at Ezra. "Let's wait until they get inside." He said, "Let them turn on the lights, unpack, then we'll go." We watched as Gar and Verna went into the house. A few minutes later, the lights came on in the windows. I imagined them excited to be home now, discussing their vacation, planning how they would spend the rest of the money from the sale of my house. My money? "Now," Ezra said after 10 minutes, and we got out of the car. The cold air burned my lungs. We walked slowly toward the house, Ezra in front, me behind him, Brett just behind. We walked up to the porch. Ezra rang the doorbell. G opened the door. His smile instantly disappeared when he saw me standing next to the two cops. "Dad?" His voice was with surprise. "What's going on, Gar Ferris?" Ezra asked in an official tone. "I'm Officer Singh. This is Officer Hines. We need to talk to you. About the sale of your father's house." Gar's face went pale despite his Bermuda tan. "Ya don't understand. What are you talking about? Can we come in?" Ezra continued in the same formal tone. "This is going to be a long conversation." G hesitated, but then stepped back, letting us into the house. It was warm inside and smelled like fresh coffee. Apparently, the first thing they did after they got back was put the coffee pot on. "What's going on, Gar?" Vera came out of the kitchen, holding a cup. When she saw us, she froze. "Merle officers." "What's going on, Mrs. Ferris?" Ezra nodded. "We're investigating possible fraud in the sale of Mr. Merle Ferris's house. We need to ask you and your husband some questions." "Fraud?" Vera shifted her gaze from the police officers to me, then to G. "What fraud? Let's sit down," Ezra suggested, pointing to the couch in the living room. We walked into a spacious room with large windows and fancy furniture. Everything in here screamed of money, which Gar and Vera didn't really have. Expensive leather furniture, a full-wall plasma TV, gilt-framed paintings. I sat down in a chair. Ezra and Brett remained standing. G and Vera slumped uncertainly on the couch. On December 15th of this year, Ezra began opening his notebook. Mr. Merle Ferris's house at 57 Oak Street was sold. According to the deed, the sale was made by G. Ferris, acting under a power of attorney on behalf of Merle Ferris. The buyers were G. and Vera Ferris. Is that correct? G. swallowed, his apple of his eye twitching. "Yes, but, it was legitimate. I have a power of attorney. Here's a copy of that power of attorney." I pulled a folded piece of paper out of my coat pocket and handed it to Ezra. He unfolded it and read it aloud. "Power of attorney issued by Merle Ferris to G. Ferris to represent him in medical facilities and to handle financial matters related to his treatment. Valid for 3 years from the date of issuance. The date of issue is November 10th, 2020. So Vera nervously fixed her hair. "That's right. G was authorized to act on his father's behalf?" "Mrs. Ferris," Ezra looked at her over his glasses, "this power of attorney has 2 limitations. First, it authorizes only medical and treatment-related financial matters. The sale of real estate is not included. Second, it expired on November 10th of this year, a month before the sale of the house." I watched their faces change. Gar turned even paler, droplets of sweat appearing on his forehead. Vera pressed her lips into a thin line, her eyes darting between me and the cops. This is some kind of mistake," G muttered. "I was sure the power of attorney gave me the right to." "Don't lie. I interrupted him, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. You knew exactly what you were doing. You sold my house while I was in the hospital and used the money to go to Bermuda and pay off part of your mortgage. You've been following us, Vera exclaimed, her voice high with indignation. No, Mrs. Ferris, Ezra interjected. This is part of our investigation. We received bank statements confirming that on December 16th, you took out a loan of $100,000 against the security of a recently purchased house. On the same day, $50,000 was transferred to the Bermuda Dreams Travel Company and the other $50,000 to your mortgage. You had no right. Vera jumped up, her face contorted with rage. This is an invasion of privacy. We had every right under the investigation, Mrs. Ferris, Ezra replied calmly. We have a warrant. He pulled a folded document from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. Vera didn't touch it, continuing to stand with clenched fists. Ah, gee. I looked at my son, who sat with his head down. Why? Why did you do that? He looked. Up and in his eyes I saw a mixture of fear, shame, and anger. Why do you think? He suddenly snapped at me. Because we needed the money. Because we were up to our necks in debt. Because this goddamn house, he pointed to the living room, is eating up all our income, and that justifies stealing? I asked quietly. It's not stealing. G raised his voice. You were going to leave the house to me when you died anyway. I just took something that was almost mine. His words hit me like a slap in the face. What's almost mine? So he already thought I was almost dead, already dividing my possessions, minus Mr. Ferris. Ezra turned to G. Using an invalid power of attorney to sell real estate is fraud. And given the amount of money involved, it's grand fraud. What are we looking at? Vera asked, sinking back into the couch. Her voice sounded less confident. Depending on the court's decision, Ezra answered, from a large fine to imprisonment for up to 5 years, plus a civil suit for invalidation and damages. 5 years, Vera went pale. For what? For taking what we would have gotten anyway. For fraud, Mrs. Ferris, Ezra said firmly. For using an invalid power of attorney in embezzlement. I looked at them, my son and his wife, tanned from an expensive vacation, dressed in fancy clothes, sitting in the living room of a house they couldn't afford, and I felt not anger, but deep, boundless fatigue. Here, I pulled an envelope from my pocket and placed it on the table next to the warrant. It's a copy of the civil suit I filed this morning. It's to invalidate the deal and give me back the title. To the house. Gar took the envelope with trembling hands. He looked like he was about to cry. Dad, his voice trembled. Can we talk about this in private? No, G, I shook my head. It's too late to talk. You made your choice when you sold my house and sent me a message at Christmas. What message? Vera asked, looking at her husband. Your house sold? I left with my wife. Bye, I quoted. A great Christmas greeting, don't you think? Vera stared at Gar with her mouth open. You wrote this to your father for Christmas? Gar didn't answer, continuing to stare at the floor. Mr. and Mrs. Ferris. Ezra spoke again. You need to report to the police station tomorrow morning at 10 Drolcows for a formal statement. Here's the subpoena. He placed another document on the table. I'd recommend you get a good lawyer. We don't have money for a lawyer, G muttered. We spent it all, Bermuda and the mortgage. I remember. I finished for him. Well, maybe I should have thought of that earlier. I stood up, feeling my heart aching. Not from sickness, from pain. The pain of betrayal. We're leaving, I said, turning to Ezra and Brett. I said everything I wanted to say. Dad? Gar stood up, holding out his hand. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. How? I asked, stopping at the door. How are you going to fix the fact that you sold the house I've lived in for 40 years? The house I built with my own hands. The house where you were born and your mother died. G was at a loss for an answer. Vera sat on the couch staring blankly into space. the envelope with the lawsuit on her lap. "Tomorrow at 10, Ezra reminded me, following me out the door. "Don't be late." We walked out into the frosty night. The stars still shone coldly over Blackfoot. I inhaled deeply, feeling the icy air clear my lungs of the mustiness of betrayal. "Are you okay, Mr. Ferris?" Ezra asked as we approached the car. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be. The patrol car was warm." Ezra turned on the engine, but didn't move. "What now?" he asked. "Now it's court," I shrugged, "and we'll see what they decide to do. Maybe they'll try to negotiate." "Are you ready to negotiate?" I wondered. Was I ready to forgive G and Verna to give up prosecution in exchange for the return of my house? "I don't know," I finally answered. "I don't know yet." Ezra nodded and pulled away. We drove through the empty streets of Blackfoot, past the houses, decorated for Christmas, past the snowdrifts glistening in the light of the street lamps. I thought about what I'd just seen, the fear in my son's eyes, the trembling hands as he held the envelope with the lawsuit. Part of me wanted to triumph, to shout, "There you go, I got what I deserved." But the other part, deep down inside, was crying. "You know, Mr. Ferris," Ezra said suddenly, keeping his eyes on the road, "I've been a cop for years. I've seen all sorts of things, and I know one thing. Revenge never brings the satisfaction we hope for. It's not revenge," I countered. "It's justice." "Maybe," he nodded. "But where is the boundary?" I didn't answer. Where is the line between justice and revenge? I wanted my house back. That's fair. But did I want my son to go to prison? To have his life ruined? What would Edith say? Ezra stopped the car in front of my house, a house that was legally no longer mine. I got out, thanked him and Brett for their help. They drove away, and I was left standing on the sidewalk, staring out the dark windows. Inside, it felt cold and empty, like my soul. Opening the door, I turned on the hallway light. Everything looked the same as usual, but it felt different. It was as if the house knew it had been betrayed, sold without its consent, as people were once sold. I made my way into the living room, sat down in my rocking chair. On the mantelpiece was a picture of Edith smiling with little G in her arms. I looked at it and wondered what would happen next. Would we ever be able to return to a normal relationship? Or was the betrayal too deep, the wound too painful? My cell phone vibrated in my pocket. "A message from G-Dad, please, let's talk. We'll fix this. I promise." I didn't answer. I put the phone on edible and continued rocking in my chair, listening to the wind howling up the chimney. Winter drafts, as Edith always said. Only now they seem colder, more piercing, like the betrayal of the sun I once trusted more than anyone else in the world. The June sun floods the kitchen of my new home. 6 months had passed since the night I stood on the doorstep of G and Verna's house with police and court documents. 6 months of court hearings, nervousness, negotiations, and finally, a decision that changed my life. I'm sitting at my desk drinking coffee and looking out the window at the neat garden I've started to organize. I've already planted a few lilac bushes. Edith always loved lilacs. I am learning anew to enjoy simple things. The singing of birds, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the silence of a home where no one will betray me. My new house is smaller than before, only 2 bedrooms instead of 4. But I don't need more than that. It's 1 story with a wide veranda in a view of the mountains. No stairs, which at my age and with my heart are becoming increasingly difficult to climb. Located on the outskirts of Blackfoot in a quiet neighborhood where neighbors say hello but don't pry. The trial lasted 3 months. Despite the clear evidence off-road, the case was more complicated than Quentin and Brenda had anticipated. G hired an attorney who built a defense that the son had acted in his father's best interest, believing that the power of attorney was still valid, that he just didn't notice the expiration date. Liar. G always had an eye for detail, especially when it came to money. He knew what he was doing, knew he was betraying me by selling the house I'd lived in for almost 40 years. In the end, the prosecutor offered a deal. Gar pleads guilty to reckless instead of willful fraud, and instead of jail time, he gets 3 years, probation, a $10,000 fine, and community service obligations. In exchange, he and Vera give up all claims to my house and return full ownership to me. I didn't want to agree. I wanted Gar to answer to the full extent of the law for what he'd done. But Quentin convinced me that this was the best option. I'd get the house back quickly, and a long process would only wear me out and ruin my health. "Do you want justice or revenge?" he asked then, looking me straight in the eye. I didn't answer. I didn't know the answer. Maybe both. I think back to the day the judge approved the deal. Gar stood pale with circles under his eyes. Vera sat in the last row, quiet, not like her usual self, bright, self-assured. When it was over, Gar tried to approach me, but I just turned around and walked out of the courtroom. I didn't want to hear his apologies, his excuses. There were no words that could bridge the gap between us. They tried to contact me numerous times after that. At first, Gar called every day, left messages asked to meet. I didn't answer. Then the threat started. He yelled into my voicemail that he would appeal, that he would prove his innocence, that he would make me sorry. I just erased the messages without listening until the end. A month later, the tone changed. Now Gar was begging for forgiveness, saying he realized his mistake, that he was sorry, that he wanted to make things right, said he loved me, that I was the only father he'd ever known. Words, 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 empty like his promises, like his conscience. Vera tried to reach out too. She came to my old house, the one I'd returned to after the trial, stood in the porch, asked to talk. I wouldn't answer the door. Then she started sending letters, long, emotional, full of remorse and requests for help. It turned out that the consequences of what they had done were more severe than I'd expected. The bank refused to restructure their mortgage after learning of Gar's criminal record. They couldn't make the loan payments and lost the house. Vera was fired from the hotel. The owners didn't want the wife of a convicted crook working as a receptionist. Gar kept his job, but the promotion was gone. I felt no joy of their misfortune, only fatigue and a kind of emptiness inside. They'd made their choices, now living with the consequences, and so was I. 3 months after the trial, I made a decision that surprised even Quentin. Sell the house. The very house I'd fought so hard for, the one I'd built with my own hands, the one I'd lived in most of my life. "Are you sure?" Quentin asked when I informed him of my decision. "After everything you went through to get him back?" "I'm sure." I nodded. Too many memories, good and bad, especially the last few. Every corner, every room reminded me of the betrayal. I caught myself staring at my phone, waiting for a call or a text from G. I'd flinch at the sound of a car pulling. Up to the house. Was Vera here again? It wasn't a life, but an existence of constant tension. The house sold quickly. Old houses in the center of Blackfoot are highly priced. I got a good price, even more than I'd bargained for, enough to buy a new house, a new pickup truck to replace my wreck, and a rainy day fun. Moving was both painful and liberating. I brought only the essentials with me. My old bed, a rocking chair I made myself, a few favorite books, pictures of Edith. The rest I sold or gave away. The furniture we'd picked out with Edith. The dishes she was so proud of. The tools I'd worked with all my life. Parting with things was like saying goodbye to parts of my life. But with each item I let go, I felt lighter. I bought my new house at the end of April when it starts to warm up in Blackfoot. It was empty and smelled of fresh paint. The previous owners had renovated it before selling it. No history, no ghosts of the past. A clean slate. I spent the first few weeks organizing the house to my liking. Hung shelves, repainted the bedroom. Light blue, favorite color, installed bird feeders in the backyard, planted lilacs and jasmine. Life was slowly getting better. The neighbors turned out to be friendly but unobtrusive. On the left was a young couple with a small child. On the right was an elderly widow, Mrs. Chen, who sometimes brought homemade cookies and didn't ask too many questions. I told them only that I had sold the old house downtown and decided to start a new life. No details about the trial, about my son's betrayal. It's my pain, and I don't want to share it with strangers. Today is exactly 1 month since I've been living in my new home. A month with no calls from G, no visits from Verna. They finally realized I don't want to see them, or maybe they just got tired of trying. Either way, I'm breathing a little easier. I finish my coffee and get ready for the garage. I want to finish the tool shelf I started yesterday. My hands aren't what they used to be, but it still feels good to work with wood. A knock on the door interrupts my plans. I open it and see the mailman, a young guy with red freckles I've never met before. "Minus Mr. Ferris," he asks, checking the envelope in his hand. Registered letter. "Sign here, please." I sign his clipboard, take the envelope, and close the door. There's no return address, but I recognize the handwriting on the envelope. G. He's trying to reach out again. Without opening the envelope, go into the living room. The fireplace isn't working. It's June, too hot, but the grate and chimney are there. I drop the letter on the cold coals, light a match, and set fire to the corner of the envelope. The paper burns quickly, the yellow flames devouring the words I don't want to read, the excuses I don't want to hear. After a minute, only ash remains of the letter. I feel strangely relieved, as if I've been relieved of a weight I didn't even realize was there. Maybe that's true freedom. Not the obligation to forgive, not the need to maintain ties that only hurt, but the right to choose who will be a part of your life. I walk out onto the veranda, sit down in the rocking chair I moved from the old house. The one thing I couldn't part with. The mountains on the horizon are shrouded in a light haze, and the air smells of cut grass and lilacs in bloom. A child laughs in the neighboring yard, a dog barks somewhere. The usual sounds of an ordinary summer day. I think about how my life has changed in these 6 months. About the betrayal, about the pain, about the decisions I've had to make, about how sometimes you have to let go of even the strongest of bonds if they only bring suffering. G will always be my son. Nothing will change that fact, but he's no longer a part of my life. It's my choice, and I don't feel guilty about it. I think of Eugene Coleman, whom I befriended in the hospital. He died in February, surrounded by his children and grandchildren who made a visitation schedule. I was at the funeral, the only non-family member listened to his children talk about him, his kindness, his love for them. I thought, this is what it means to be a real father. This is what it means to raise children who will be there for you to the end. I didn't get that. But maybe it's not that important. Maybe there are other ways to live a decent life, other ways to find peace and quiet. The day after the letter is burned, I go to the kennel and buy a puppy. A German shepherd, smart with intelligent eyes. I call him Buddy. He runs around the yard, wagging his tail, chews on my old shoes, sleeps at my feet when I work on the porch. Simple, unconditional acceptance that I've been sorely lacking. I start going to the local senior center, not because I feel old, but because it has a good library and interesting people. I meet Gertrude Wilkins, a 70-year-old former teacher who runs a reading circle. We discuss books, sometimes have lunch together. Nothing serious, just a pleasant conversation. Gradually, life fills with new acquaintances, new interests. I start learning to carve figures from wood. I've always wanted to try it, but never had the time. It turns out I'm pretty good at it. I make toys for my neighbors. Children, small souvenirs for my friends from the center. Sometimes, of course, I get bored, especially in the evenings when I sit in my rocking chair and look at Ida's picture. I tell her about my day, about the new house, about Buddy, about Gertrude, about how I miss her, about how sometimes, very rarely, I miss G, not the man he became, but the little boy who looked at me with adoration when I taught him how to hammer nails. At times like this, I wonder, did I do the right thing by severing all ties with my son? Maybe I should have given him another chance, listened to High's explanations, his apologies. But then I remember his face in the courtroom, not remorseful, but calculating. I remember how he sold my house while I was in the hospital, how he sent me that Christmas message, and I realize I made the right choice. Some things can't be forgiven. Some bridges are burned forever. In early June, I get a letter from Brenda Martinez. She tells me that Gar and Verna have left Blackfoot, moved to Idaho Falls, where G has found a new job. I fold the letter and tuck it away in my desk drawer. This information doesn't change anything. They could move to the other side of the country or stay in the house next door. I don't want to see them anyway. Life goes on. The days get longer, warmer. I work in the garden, hang out with Buddy, read books on the porch. Sometimes we go to the mountains with Gertrude just to sit by the lake, admire the view. Nothing romantic, just the friendship of two lonely people. On one of those days, sitting on the shore of Lake Jackson, I look at my reflection in the water. Gray hair, a wrinkled face, eyes that have seen too much. But in those eyes, there's no longer the pain, the anger of 6 months ago. There is calmness, acceptance, even something akin to happiness. I think about how life is a strange thing. You never know where it will take you. 6 months ago, I was a broken old man, betrayed by my own son, losing the house I built with my own hands. Today, I'm a man starting a new life at 67 years old. A man who has his own home, his own dog, his own friends. A man who has found the strength to let go of the past and move on. That same evening, I sit on the veer of my new home, sipping iced tea. Buddy snoozes at me feet, crickets chirping in the grass. At sunset, the sky is colored in shades of pink and gold. The mountains on the horizon appear purple. I think about how life doesn't end with betrayal. That it's possible to start over, even when it feels like all is lost. That sometimes the strongest connection is the one we choose to break, freeing ourselves from pain, from disappointment, from the weight of the past. Tomorrow I'll wake up early, have coffee on the porch while the sun rises, then I'll take Buddy for a long walk in the park. Maybe stop by the senior center to read the new book Gertrude recommended. In the evening, I'll work on a wooden horse figurine for Mrs. Chen's grandson. An ordinary day, calm, measured, full of small pleasures. A day of a man who is finally free, free from betrayal, from bitterness, from having to hold on to ties that only hurt. And in this freedom, in this peace, I find what I have been looking for all my life. Not just a house, not just a roof over my head, but a real home. A place where I can be myself, where no one will betray me, where I can finally breathe fully, new horizons, a new life, and maybe a little late, but still real happiness.